Hey team, welcome back to another great episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by my new friend, Joe Sampson. Joe, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, man. Really appreciate you having me on for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I'm excited to dive in. Let's get it rocking right away. You get the same opening question everybody does. What does it mean for you, Joe, to be intentional?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to enough of your podcasts, so this was something on my mind when we first agreed to do this. But I think for me, it definitely starts with the foundation of God in my life. I mean, that is the intention and the rock that that I build about everything on. So I'm going to go with that one. And I know I'm going to struggle. I know I'm going to have mistakes. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to mess up. But by His grace, I feel like that's the direction that I'm going to go. So that is definitely the intention that I start each and every day, minute, hour on right there. And then the rest is easy peasy from there, my friend.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. One of those profound moments of my life actually came from my wife defining for me for the first time. I think I was probably 40 and defining for me what grace actually means.
Yeah.
Right. Like you grew up around the church. Like I grew up in small town, Catholic church kind of thing. Like you went because you had to, went to CCD classes. I had a profound experience with it when I was 16. I was in and out of the church for a good part of like my first 20 professional years.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really understood grace. And I don't think if you don't understand it, I don't think you know that you need it.
Yeah, that's profound and so true. I'm trying to think when I first realized that word and what it meant and what it truly meant, But yeah, once you find it and once you figure out how badly you need it, because we're all trying so hard to be perfect and, trying to make this business plan work or that business plan work or whatever you're doing at your job work. And it's tough, man, especially if you have to rely on yourself. It can be a word I'm not going to say right now, but by His grace, boy, we're steering directions that we didn't even know we were supposed to go. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, for anybody listening who nobody took the time to define it for you, it means God's unmerited favor, which means unmerited, right? Which means you didn't earn it and you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Also, you get it and it's free.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a favor, so you have to receive it. You have to choose to allow Him to do it in your life. Kind of an interesting way to start off the show, man. But I follow the example of the most intentional leader of all time.
Yeah. Well, and you have to. And I think, we are somewhat responsible for doing, for taking advantage of the gifts that He does give us. We're responsible to kind of live those out. And if we don't, I think I saw a post from Tim Tebow of all people. I don't know if you follow him on LinkedIn, but it's kind of worth
it. Last summer on my birthday, it was awesome.
He did what? I'm sorry.
I saw him speak. Yeah, I went to go see.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't really love him as a college football player. I'm not real sure why. His antics were a little much for me. But then as I got to know him, at least follow him, pretty profound stuff. But I think I'm going to read it for you. I think I got it right here. I can't remember if I do or not. Yeah. When we don't use the gifts, the time or the resources God has blessed us with, is equivalent to telling Him thanks, but no thanks. So don't hide those, multiply them. And I'm like,
right.
Awesome. I love it. And it's really the exact journey that I'm on right now too. It's just, I think I told you earlier when we talked, like you got to have, I jumped in the boat, I went all in, and it's His wind blowing me around. So taking advantage of those gifts is pretty important in my life for sure. And yours too, I can tell.
Yeah. Roger that, man. I'm not doing anything I'm doing right now that I enjoy doing. And I enjoy doing 98% of the things I do. without that, right? Still got to do taxes and some of the other things that are less enjoyable, right? Like we've all got things we grind on, but
yeah, exactly.
So much of that, even doing those things, right, is just It's like, hey, consider it all joy, right? It's all proving you. It's all perfecting you, in the long run. So, man, well, let's talk, Joe. Let's talk a little bit about you. Get to know you, your background a little bit. What are you up to now? We got connected through the social medias, through the LinkedIn's arena. You've been following the show for a little bit, but man, just give us a little intro.
Yeah, so I spent about 20 years in the ag equipment space. I worked for a supplier that manufactured wear parts for the industry. So I, worked my way up from just a general sales guy to VP of sales, probably about 10 years or so ago. Um, so most of the work that came along with that job was building relationships, building the partnerships that still continue with all of us today. So that was primarily my career. And then just recently, we're talking, about a week, maybe 10 days or so ago, I've decided to kind of follow those gifts and listen. And so I started my own business called Embo Sales Consulting. So we do, pretty much everything from fractional leadership to strategic sales advice, operational advice. I mean, you kind of name it. And we're in the partnership development phase at this point in time. So it's good to have some options on the table. I was expecting to have some, but I really didn't expect to have all the ones that are coming my way. So it's been really, really great the last 10 days or so, 10 days or so ago. And I'm just looking forward to the future, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congrats on making the leap and jumping in. I mean, you didn't hesitate, just all 2 feet in, man, just jumping right over the edge.
Well, there was some hesitation. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't.
Sure.
It came with some serious thought. But yeah, once I finally made the jump or the leap. Have you read The Trade? By the way, have you read that book?
Yeah. I had
you know
Lon
what
on
I'm
the
talking.
podcast. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, you had him on. Yeah, he's interesting cat. But yeah, it's just you make the leap and you go for it.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember it well. Going back to 2013, April Fool's Day, 2013 was the day that I made the leap. And I think subconsciously, I didn't do it on purpose. I wish I had. Subconsciously, I think I did it on April. Like I literally called my CEO, resigned on April Fool's Day. And, I should have, like by day 2, I had lost all my courage and I wanted to go back and say April Fools.
I know it. I hear you.
But then I was like, some of us are in this now, to quote a great line from William Wallace in Braveheart. And I was like, you got to go. But I never, there's been some rough times, don't get me wrong. But I've never really considered going back.
Yeah. What was your background? I can't remember. What'd you do for the start of your career?
Yeah, prior to doing that, so my very first sales job in ag was selling software to feed mills.
Okay.
Worked on the feed management systems software platform, which later got bought by Cargill, and still is, I think, the base operating system for a lot of the feed batching that happens in the livestock feed manufacturing side.
Yeah, I got you.
So, so that was my first. I cut my teeth on sales, selling software to people that didn't want to buy software.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it started there. But my undergrad degree was in agriculture education. I was always doing training and speaking on the side. So I worked for National FFA as a leadership trainer, would travel around. I would work, and then Monday through Friday most weeks, but then Monday through Thursday on occasion. And then I would take a PTO on Friday, fly to Boise, Idaho on Thursday night, and then do an FFA leadership conference Friday, Saturday, and fly home on Sunday, go back to work on Monday. So I've always been speaking, always been training, with a short stint from like 2008 to 11 with small kids and a relationship that wasn't working. I stopped doing it. And then I woke up in 2011 completely miserable because I missed it. I missed the teaching. I missed the speaking, which is one of God's anointings on my life, is like, go speak, go teach. Because it comes so natural for me. And people can feel it when you're in your anointing. So I had started 2011 is when I started to really start thinking about building myself into someone who could go do this. That took a couple of years. And then finally in 2013 made the full leap. And that was 12 years ago.
Well, yeah, and I commend you for it, and I think that's why I reached out to you. It's strange, the feeling, because it's you're throwing your vulnerability out there right away too, man. I've likened it to, walking on a nude beach or something. You're just like, okay, hello world, here I am. And you're exposing yourself on social media, you're exposing, everything about you. And it can be pretty eye-opening, but also, kind of inspiring in the same sense. Cause sometimes the last person to believe in you is yourself, the guy looking back at you in the mirror, for sure. So
Mhm.
it takes a certain set of guts to do what you did, man.
Yeah, well, likewise. Well, so let's just talk a little bit about where you came from. I want to go back, and I know there's a lot of salespeople, a lot of sales leaders that listen to this podcast. So you were in that type of role most
Yeah.
recently, and you mentioned you went from general sales to sales VP.
Yeah.
So just walk us through that journey a little bit. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always kind of been in leadership roles throughout my career before agriculture was actually marketing and advertising. But
Mhm.
um, I was definitely rusty when I was promoted to that VP of sales role. So, what it looked like to me was, at that point, you go from trying to be the guy, be the man, selling everything, getting the attaboys, to trying to make somebody else the man or the woman. And that's
Mhm.
where, for me, I kind of like to surround myself with the eternal optimist people. There's no other point really to be than to be optimistic. And so that's what I kind of portrayed myself as. Let's be as optimistic as possible, and then try to build you up to, it's kind of hard when you go to somebody and say, hey, okay, your job is to try to build relationships. Well, how do you do that? How do you build a relationship and make it into a partnership and make it even deeper than that? And those are hard things to coach, but
Mhm.
it starts, I think, with number one, just being optimistic.
Mhm.
You can do
Yep.
it. You can do these things. Bad things are going to happen to you every day. I mean, you're going to hear no's, you're going to hear uh, you know, customers that aren't happy with you, but how do you plow through, and how do you stay positive and keep working through? And I think that's contagious. And
Mhm.
so that was what I tried to focus on right away in the leadership role, was be that calm presence, that optimistic presence that stays positive even through the rough times. And we know in this industry that's definitely full of the peaks and the valleys. They're
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah. We're doing a valley right now.
We're in a valley right now. That is the truth. I just got back from the Iowa Ag Expo, actually, yeah, earlier this week, and boy,
Yeah.
a lot of negative talk, a lot of talk you can't control. The market is uncontrollable right now, but
Yeah.
everybody still tries.
Well, it's wild, and business is still happening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're still writing contracts
yeah.
right now. So,
I mean, I was at a meeting this morning at a foundry, actually, that I'm looking to partner with, and they really aren't in agriculture right now. So they're trying to find out about it, and they're interested in it. And most people that are in this industry right now are going, get out, get out. I'm diversifying into something different. And they're taking the exact opposite approach. Get me in it. And now's the time to get in. I mean, if you want to get
good.
into ag, now's the time, because there's a lot of opportunity. And then when it comes back, that's the one thing we all know, it'll come back. And if you're prepared and ready, hold on. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, man. I mean, so this is now, this is year 12 going into year 13 in the business. That's a third of a career,
Right.
right? And I didn't even start until I was in my mid 30s with this thing. So, or early to mid 30s, right? Um, and so, so now it's kind of like basically half of my career. Well, probably will be my career in the ag space. And when I first got started, some of the first sales training gigs that I was doing, right, were with people who had come in. Some people had come in during really, really good times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it got tough. So let's go back, 10, 12 years ago, right? So it'd been really good. And then it got really tough. We went through the last down cycle. And you just had people crying in their Cheerios in the morning because it was
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden it was challenging. Well, when commodity prices are high, if you're a salesperson out there, I don't care what you're selling, it doesn't matter. When the commodity prices are good, then they have to be high, but when they're good, – it's easier to have sales conversations. People just make orders. but it's right now, like during this time frame, when we're going through situations like we're going through right now, this is where the relationships get made.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's what's happening. 90% of salespeople are out there grumbling, talking about how, and blaming their customer. I don't care if their customer is an ag retailer, if their customer is the farmer, if their customer is somebody internally. Everybody's got a story about what's wrong with that person right now, or what that person should have done differently when times were good so that it wouldn't be so hard right now. Okay. That's 90%, maybe even more, but it's at least 90. If you can be in the 10% that sees that for what it is and just puts your nose down and goes out and gets after it, here's a lot of good things that are going to happen. Number one, if a reduction in force comes to your organization, you are the least likely to be on that list. Okay.
Yeah.
No guarantees in life. It's not your company.
Yeah. Well, right. That's
but
true.
you're the least like, they're going to see the ethic. And when times are tough, I want somebody who's willing to get in the trenches and go walk beside me to go figure out how to get it done. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, the thing with the down industry is that's when all the excuses comes. That's like what you were saying. But, when you're going through the good times too, you almost don't, a lot of businesses have changed hands over the course of the last 5 years. It's relatively new. So there's kind of this turnover happening specifically in the ag equipment space. So, there's a lot of false pats on the back during those good times too. It's not all you.
But
It's a
you
lot.
think, but the story is in their heads, man. Like, man, we got such a good relationship with this guy. He loves me. Right.
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 I take him out and I buy him all the steaks and all the wine, and we go on all
Yep.
the trips, and man, like,
Yep.
we're best friends. No, you are not. I am
No.
sorry. You are not.
No. This industry is definitely about those things you mentioned. Commodity price is a huge one. I mean, in equipment side, steel prices is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to take those into consideration during the good times, and then the bad times. You're right. That's when you can dial in on finding digging up the rocks, digging underneath and saying, wait a minute, we weren't in this before, but now this seems like a good idea to go down. It's a small ROI, or excuse me, it's a small investment, but the ROI can be huge someday because you might not have built this, or you might have outsourced this. And now you're bringing some of these things in house, and you're just moving forward, and you're going to feel that false sense of security again when it gets hot. So you just got to be careful on both of these things. This is a wonky industry. It's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. From a sales perspective, what's your go-to? I mean, to really, really build intentional relationships, right? Since this is the Intentional Leadership Podcast, right?
Yeah.
What do you do what have you personally done to make sure that you're intentionally curating those relationships to give yourself the best chance to still be in the game, maybe when things get tough, or when the market changes and your customer didn't see it coming, or commodity prices get too high or too low, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah. I mean, I think first you can't focus on the things you can't control. You can't control the commodity price. You can't control whatever these tariffs are going to end up doing or not doing here in the next year, 2 years, whatever it may be. So you got to start with the things that you can control. And that, like I said before, is I think you got to surround yourself with optimism. We live in a world now where it's so easy to focus on problems. And problems are called a lot of different things in a lot of different industries, but in the end, they're problems. Sometimes you can spend a week focusing on one problem that's just a normal Tuesday, flush it, move on, get on to the next thing. And the more problems you focus on, the more they're going to create. So I was super intentional on focusing on solutions, building momentum. Momentum is one thing that's relatively easy to do every day. It doesn't take a huge giant thing. You just need to, maybe it's send an email to a new customer. Maybe it's go call on a new customer. Maybe it's, try to look into a new product and see if it's something that's manufacturable, those types of things. It's momentum, it's building, it's a stepping stone every day to something, to something that could be positive, and flush those problems. That's we got to stop focusing on problems as a society. It's almost out of control at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Drives me nuts, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an old Tony Robbins quote that says, where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Yeah.
Right. And those people are just focused on what they perceive to be wrong.
Yep.
Right.
I heard another one. It's if you look at a field of dandelions, do you see weeds or do you see wishes? Mm. And I like to say I see the wishes. I mean, pick them up, blow them, and see what happens.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of in your mind and how you focus on it. And if you can control that and let it rip, you're in good shape, man.
Man, I see salad.
Or tea. A lot of people drink dandelion tea.
Dandelion tea. I mean, you got there's it's funny. We try to kill it off all the time. It's actually one of the healthiest plants.
I'm a
that's readily available.
So I love morning coffee. I can't, that'd be the one thing I couldn't give up, but I can't drink too much of it. I drink, if I go on past about 9 o'clock, I'm done. So I switched over to like herbal teas. I'm going to sound like a real man here on this podcast, but that's all right.
I like it.
But yeah, I've heard that about dandelion teas. I don't think I've actually had it, but.
Well, it's in a lot of things. Like they mix it in with other teas and other things, but like dandelion root, the old dandelion wine, they can make that from the flowers and stuff like that, but all parts of the dandelion are edible.
There you go. Then you see salad. I like that better.
I mean, I see. Yeah. I mean, you do. it's right. Like the point of the story is like, take a look at it.
Right.
What are you focusing on? And that's where, what's Buffett say, right? When there's blood in the streets, start buying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He starts
taking
buying
advantage.
When everybody else is running one way, right? He's running into the fire. And that's where I'm at with this right now. I mean, I think that, the obvious thing is that we're going through a bit of a correction, in the ag space right now. There's a lot of unknowns. It's not necessarily ag's fault. It's not like a bubble necessarily, but there's just a lot of interesting things that are going to come out of this. We don't know what all that's going to be. And what we do know is that, some will make it and some won't. Just this week, I think I saw, two large entities, ADM laid off 700 people. I think maybe I heard another large ag retailer was going to be, cutting some. Landis there in Iowa just cut 10%. So,
yep.
Okay, well, it's happening. So
it's happening.
The question is, now what do I do with it? Now is the time for you to figure out how to be the most intentional salesperson you can be, the most intentional leader that you can be. Like, we started off talking about a relationship about God. We started off talking about a relationship about, or the definition of grace. Like,
right.
Here's where, as I think about what is an intentional leader. Okay. An intentional leader now doubles down on that number one most important relationship instead of depending on themselves to fix whatever's going on around them.
Yeah, I think that's profound. It reminds me of a question I want to ask you as well. I mean, you named this podcast Intentional Leader. Have you ever been asked that question? I mean, what's your intentional?
What is the definition?
What is the definition of intentional?
Yeah, I don't know if nobody's really spun it around on me during the show.
But you've got to have a profound answer, I'm guessing. Yeah, I mean,
so here's what's so interesting. This is one of the reasons why I know, why I have a pretty good sense which organizations I think will make it, which ones I think won't, which ones have great culture, which ones don't, based on the people that I've been interviewing. Because if you just go back and listen to the answers and look at them as much as I have, and we've actually now we're taking every single transcript, we're plugging this into our chat GPT, we're learning from all these, and now we're going to create more resources, for our listeners, and more trainings and so forth. And so this has been a big experiment in gathering data.
Yeah.
Right. And gathering expertise. And now we'll be able to put that into actual usable resources that you guys listening right now, by the way, head over to themomentumcompany.com and get on the website and get on the list now. So you can be the first to find out when this happens. But So here's what I'll say, to be intentional. I love what you led off with, by the way, right? It's like really, really leaning in on that relationship. That's a big part of it. So, one of the words that's come up across a lot of the interviews that resonates, that I find to be very true, is that to be an intentional leader, you have to be deliberate, right?
Yeah.
So intentionality is deliberate. Okay. To go back to our early conversation in this episode, God did not do anything on accident.
Yeah.
So look around, right? Look around. So here's an interesting thing. He didn't make anything that does 1 + 1.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
There's nothing in nature that only makes one of itself. Everything else multiplies. Like humans maybe make one person at a time, one human at a time, but you can make multiple children, right? So you're made to procreate, right?
I mean,
and multiply, right? He literally says, "Go forth and multiply."
Go forth and multiply.
Yeah, I recently, I'm going through a project right now. I'm actually copying the whole book of Genesis word for word, and just like a little meditation that I'm doing. And so it's like he didn't just say this to man to go forth and multiply. He commanded all living things to go forth and multiply. So when an acorn falls from an acorn tree and grows into another grows into another oak tree, what's the potential number of additional acorns from one acorn?
I don't know.
You can't even. I mean, our human minds, millions, probably, right? I mean, think about if this thing. I mean, some of these oak trees could live to be 250 plus years old, and so and they're producing hundreds of thousands, if not a million, acorns a year off this thing. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. That may be a bit of an overstatement, but it's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
It's thousands and thousands, and you take that over 250 years. That's a lot more acorns. Bring it back to the ag context, right? You plant wheat, right? Right? I mean, you plant a potato, you plant a corn seed, right? And that you're going to get back a multiple, right? There's a multiple on that corn. There's a multiple on that potato. There's a multiple on the acorn. There's a multiple, by the way, on his investment in you.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I'm going to shamelessly plug here right now too, is my podcast is called Germinate. And the reason I picked that word, obviously it's a play on words with the ag space, but also germinate. And I didn't really know this, but when a seed germinates, when one seed takes off and starts germinating, the others around it want to follow suit. So I liken that to people, and when we all want to grow and develop and learn, we're just so much better doing this together. You know what I mean? Me and you hooking up, all the people you've had on your podcast. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure one of the residual effects you found out is just the amount of knowledge that people have out there and all the fascinating things that everybody's into. And similar to me, in the short-term time that I've been doing this, it's, there's a lot of seeds out there. And if we can all follow suit and just germinate up out of the ground and help each other grow, man, the sky's the limit, right? It's fascinating.
I love that. When one seed germinates, all the others want to follow suit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. In case we get tight at the end, where do we go to, can I get Germinate on?
Yeah. So Germinate, the podcast will drop on February 19th. I don't know. We're recording this on the 7th.
This will go live on Monday. So
okay.
Yeah.
So check it out on that. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well, Joe Sampson at Embo Sales. And then I'll have, like I said, this business of mine is fresh, brand new. I'm just starting. So all the things are coming on down the pipeline. So now I'm letting it out for the world. So I better hold up my end of the bargain here. So, but yeah, you can shoot me an email too at joe@embosales.com. And love to connect with any of you out there. Like I said, I've listened for a while now. So, there's some good minds out there I'd love to talk to.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
So, all right, so there's 3 Ds that go into my definition, just to come back and give finality to the answer of your question. What's my definition of intention? So the first one is it's deliberate. The second is that it's distinct.
Okay.
Okay. So is it really intentional if it's not distinctly you? Because if it's not, that just you, I mean, we just copy that, right, from someone else. And then by the way, sometimes we need to emulate each other. Like I need
Yeah.
to borrow your confidence so that I can go right on this
Right.
sales call right now, or I need to borrow someone else's confidence until I can get there. And specifically from a leadership perspective, I'm speaking to the CEOs and the vice presidents and the regional managers and the team managers who listen to the show that we work with, like our target audience. Your presence to the people you lead means everything.
Yeah.
It means everything to them. There are people who will stick around during tough times, when you're going through it and you've kind of lost your way. And by the way, every leader who's ever been to the top has felt alone. And so, your ability to just sit down more often than not and be super present and bring your distinction, right? The thing that makes there's something like, I will follow Joe Sampson for a reason, right? I'll follow Mark Jewell for there's something about him. There's an attractor factor. We actually teach this. There's an attractor factor that that you have, and I will follow you because of your distinct leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It's something. There's something about you, and people who are willing to lean into that, and really get to know that, and be okay with that. Know who they are, what they stand for, what they will tolerate, and what they won't tolerate. Those people become magnetic. Anybody who lacks distinction due to their lack of the attractor factor becomes wishy-washy.
Yeah.
And we don't follow those people through hard times.
Well,
I think for that matter.
I think it's great, man. I think it's obviously you've thought about it, or maybe you just if you just thought that up on the fly, I'm jealous because if you did, that's impressive. But
120 hours sitting here interviewing guys like you and gals like you.
Right.
I've had a little bit of time to think about it. You know what I'm saying? But lastly, the third word is that it has to be divine. It's divinely guided. All intentional leadership is divinely guided. It can't exist without the divine inspiration that is God.
Yeah.
He created. We have to give him credit for everything. You exist. You're one out of 400 trillion odds that you showed up here, that this physical specimen that is you got created. That was not an accident, right? He doesn't do things on, and so he has intention for us in our calling to be leaders.
Yeah.
And if we don't lean into that, then we're doing it separate from him, and you're doing it harder. It's harder than it has to be. And this is a message for everybody listening. Most of you are going through this right now. You're doing it separate from God. And the reason that it's so hard right now is because you're not leaning in on the divine inspiration that actually makes it easier.
Yeah. Once you let go and let him lead you, oh man, it's like a 1,000-pound weight comes off your back and you're free. You're free to just, yeah.
You got to unpack that box. We are not built to carry it alone.
No, we are not.
We
are never. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, I think I might've heard this in a sermon, but I live in Iowa. So there's a high school here called Waukee. I think they won that. Somebody's going to fact check me on this, which is fine, but I believe the 4x4 track team won the state title this past year at a certain time. I can't even remember the time. I should have had these numbers, but that time is better by multiple seconds than the fastest miler in the entire world. A high school track team in Iowa beat the world record holder for the mile run by multiple seconds. That tells you that we are better. We need each other. We need each other to thrive. That's another one of your words, Mark, and really not one of your words, but something that you've, is part of your brand.
It's how we're made.
Yeah. Yep. It's how we're made. We're made to thrive. And I think that's pretty profound stuff for sure. So,
yeah, so good. That's to finally come to the complete answer of your question.
You nailed it, man.
Yeah,
you nailed it.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's deliberate, it's distinct, it's divine. That's intentional leadership.
Yeah. And just, real quick to pull it back to the ag space too, is there's a lot of companies right now a lot of businesses manufacturing, whatever it may be, that are going through this phase of, the owner is also the HR specialist, the accountant. They're out making sales calls and they're mopping the floors in the bathrooms as the day ends. And that's probably not using the gifts that God gave you to thrive. You need help. You need to break free of some of those things. And it's, especially during these down cycles, this is the time to kind of take a look in the mirror and realize, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be mopping. Let me give up mopping the floor. I'm gonna stop doing that one. And maybe then I can give up the HR space and I can, find out what it is you're good at and what you're great at and stick to that. And then surround yourself with people around you that can help. And that's really the whole point of, I think, what both of us are doing is just trying to do our part to help all these businesses out that need assistance and that are finally coming to the terms to recognize it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, it's such an interesting time, to be out there doing the things that you're doing, the things that we're doing. And I'm really excited for the people that are going to get to work with you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What was finally like, for those people that are maybe hitting that career stage where it's like, man, maybe it's time for something else. We're going through an interesting time in the industry right now, et cetera. Maybe now's the time. What would you tell somebody who's thinking about taking that leap that you took?
I mean, I think you gotta be open. You can't keep that inside you. You can't keep those feelings inside you. So you got to be super open around. I mean, with me, one of the biggest deciding factors to help push me over the edge is I've got a couple of teenagers and, I've been married almost 20 years. So I completely included my family into everything because, let's face it, when you decide to give up a career that most people would die to have, they would love to be where I was at. And then you give it all up. One of the major things that you give up is the financial aspect of it. So I was super open about it with my family, and they more or less told me, hey, dad, hey, husband, I would rather you come home and, be rejuvenated, be excited, be inspired than kind of maybe be stuck. And they were the deciding factor. So my piece of advice there to everybody listening is just be open. Call me, call Mark, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your mentors, because there's a lot of us going through these things right now. And, you have the skills, you have the ability, to be able to assist and be helpful to a lot of different places. So that was my biggest thing is just including everybody. Let it rip, be open, be vulnerable. Why not?
Yeah.
What do you got to lose?
Love it. Super honorable, and I think about how that serves kids later on. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of us just grew up with dads who just ground it out, even though it was maybe super off the mark, maybe even wasn't their calling necessarily. It were just, things were different, in the 80s, right? When we were growing up, or the 70s, when we were growing, whatever. So even the 90s, for that matter. But, we live in a world now where there's just infinite possibilities, and that's the world that our kids live in.
Yeah. Oh, my dad died in 2016, and it's weird. I still have conversations with him, but he was very old school as well. And I'm not sure he would have approved of this decision. I'm not 100% positive of that, but there were so many times in my life when I wish my old man would have been like, this is what's going on in my head. Yeah. I wish, I knew he wanted to talk to somebody about it. He couldn't get it. He was too damn stubborn. And that's just the way those boys rolled up. They didn't know any better,
Yeah.
So I took the exact opposite approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I interestingly enough have taken a very similar path.
Have you?
To my dad, in being more self-employed, entrepreneurial, in nature. But what was it, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the term lifestyle entrepreneur came out, right? You started hearing lifestyle entrepreneur, right? Somebody who just, it's a solo entrepreneur, somebody like me that finds a way to just, make the whatever, not a lot of money, but just the money that they need to live the lifestyle that they want, whatever that is.
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Not really growing a business, right? But just, you know,
Yep.
enough to subsist and whatever that means to them. And so, you know, my dad was born in 1941, so very much not of the generation.
Similar.
But he just never conformed. He never fit the mold, and very intentionally, he did everything from he got out of the Army, built a 125 cow dairy farm. Okay, got burned out on dairy farming, sold the cows, had an airstrip on the farm, started an aerial photography business.
Nice.
Got burned out on taking pictures out of an airplane, right? Sold that business, became a full-time fur trader and trapper. My first job was helping to go and collect the fox urine that he had devised a device underneath all of our fox pens, and he would resell the fox urine to other trappers all around the country via the Trapper magazine.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. And so get this, years ago, you'll love this. Years ago, when after he passed away and we were going through stuff, right, came across an old manila folder with orders from all the people who had saw his ad in the Trapper magazine circa 1979, 78, 80, 81, would write him a handwritten letter. It says, "Dear Jim Jewell, please find enclosed the payment of $12 for 1 gallon of grade A fox urine. Please remit to," and they would give their address, and people would send him money for him to send them fox piss in a box. And it just amazing. And this is how we did business.
What a stud. I mean, yeah, you can make money selling fox piss. I mean, come on. That's impressive. That's impressive. I love it.
Oh man. All right, Joe, we got to go. I got to run to my next. How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, like